All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Coaches Roundtable. We've got Paddy back on this time, answering some more nutrition questions. I'm currently sat down in the secret Russian bunker, so apologies if I dip in and out of signal. The perks of working from home are being outweighed currently. But anyway, enough about me. How are you guys getting on?
Yeah, not too bad. How are you, Paddy?
All good. Yeah. No, just trying to keep busy, keeping training away, and trying to keep active and reading a few books and watching a few Netflix shows. I'm sure, like everyone else.
Yeah.
About it for now.
Yeah, it's a crazy time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. Should we go straight into the questions?
Yeah.
Yep. Sure.
All right. So the first question that I want to ask you is, do you think that the mental aspect of tracking macros negates the positive effect of this tool?
So, again, I would say if you are a beginner, if you're, let's say, for example, a beginner starting out, I would say stay away from tracking, okay, and just focus on the sport itself. Just focus on, in general, healthy nutrition. Again, if you're more into your complex training and you're really trying to get to the top of your sport, then I really think tracking is definitely beneficial. And then again, there are some negatives to tracking. So it can be very inaccurate. You know, when people are inputting their data into MyFitnessPal, it is hard sometimes to estimate sort of with the amount of something or you know, the amount or like what type of something is. And then you could also feel that your diet's never good enough. You know, this sort of perfectionistic trait that if you have that, you know, you could be constantly battling with yourself to, you know, get the best nutrition, you know, get the exact amount of carbohydrates you need, get, you know, exactly the window of opportunity straight after a workout. And sometimes it can be a little bit detrimental and actually take away from the enjoyment of the sport. And then as well as that, it can be addicting, especially if you have an addictive personality, you know, tracking every single little thing. And then potentially it might take you out of social events, you know, going out with friends and family, you know, saying, oh, well, I can't have that because that's going over my carb amount, or, you know, I need to order this because I need to get this amount of protein, or, you know. But then again, on the other side, if you take it in small bursts, tracking can be very, very beneficial, especially if you are very deficient in a certain macro. Such an example would be protein, which is very important. You know, and then someone might see that, you know, they think that they're getting enough protein in throughout the day, and then they're finding that they're sore, or they're just not going to bed properly, or they're not recovering. And when they actually do track it, they see that they're, you know, a long way off what they need to get, and it can be beneficial that way. So I would say, yeah, in small doses, it can be very beneficial, but not to get too obsessed with it.
Yeah, I guess it's the same with everything, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
I think like just to kind of add on to that, because I've tried kind of like macro tracking before, mainly just like literally just notebook, just write things in depending on the column. But it's like, I think what you said about like finding it difficult to track everything, because like even with, you know, the flexibility that like a notebook gives you, because, you know, you don't have any kind of like predetermined categories or types or anything. You just write down what you want to write down. It's like even just going out, you know, going out to restaurants, going out, you know, for drinks with friends, that kind of thing. It becomes so hard to actually track just everything that you're getting in. So I found that it was kind of like, it just wasn't giving me sort of enough coverage of what I was looking at. And also, you know, you mentioned about like just kind of, you know, the data that you're getting is only as useful as your ability to kind of use it, really. So exactly. I think it's like, rather than thinking, oh, let's track this, that, and the other and just get everything in, just like pick those kind of areas that are important. So, you know, for me, it's like, I'm just looking at like 3 square meals a day plus snacks. And then the only thing that I am tracking is like my weight. But kind of later on down the line, I might choose to sort of add more metrics in or record them, that kind of thing. So it's like, I'd say I don't, you know, get too hung up about like just doing everything at once, and just pick those kind of variables that are going to be useful to you, and then add one. Then if that's working, add another, and then so on and so forth. Yeah, I don't know. It's based on my experience with it.
It's a good
I
point.
definitely agree. And
yeah, go on, Pads.
No, I definitely agree. And you know, for people starting out that want to go down the route of, you know, tracking foods, I would say keep it very simple. And one thing that I tell people is, if you're going to track, just track two things: track your protein and then track your calories.
Yeah.
And it's very, very simple. Just make sure you're getting enough protein in, and make sure you're hitting your calorie requirements. So, you know, if you want to put on weight, you get in a calorie surplus. If you want to lose weight, you get in a calorie deficit, and that is it. And then, as you talked about, Alex, you know, on down the line, maybe looking at your carb intake pre and post training, look at your energy levels. Do you need to switch it up? What types of foods are you having as well to sort of benefit your performance? But yeah, I would just say keep it very simple as well.
Yeah, I was about to say a similar thing. You covered it pretty well, but I think it makes a difference as well, like psychologically, when it comes to tracking calories versus tracking macros versus not tracking macros, and especially like you there's definitely a benefit to both. But I think, I mean, we touched on it a little bit last time about the psychological benefit to potentially not tracking it, where, like you mentioned, you know, taking time to enjoy the food and actually taste the food. And I think that makes such a massive difference when it comes to not just eating like a good meal, but actually feeling like it's satisfying you and not caring about whether it's hitting 40 grams of protein or whether I'm eating 30 grams of protein every meal and stuff like that. But yeah. All right.
Yeah, I think that's really, really beneficial as well, because I remember we talked about it last time, where if you're just constantly tracking your calories, you know, there's no if you're inputting it into MyFitnessPal, there's no like sort of way that you can put in how tasty that food was. You know, it's all about calculated. It's very cold and calculated.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, again, just going back to it, athletes need to enjoy their food as well. You know, that's basically my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially, I mean, I don't want to touch on it too much, but you mentioned like if people struggle with, say, like disordered eating, which is quite common in strength sports, without going into too much detail, like we have to stay within certain weight categories. And I think like when you ask someone who's, say, a 50 kilo lifter who's snatching close to 1.5, 2 times body weight, like there's going to be some element of you're going to have to restrict calories, or, you know, and once you've restricted those calories, it might come to the point where you might want to binge eat because you've restricted yourself so much to be in that weight category that, you know, it's affected you quite a lot. And I know people who have been like that. I haven't been like that personally, but I know people who have been like that, and I can imagine that it's difficult when it comes to that situation, that it's not just about counting calories, it's about you become obsessed with staying in that weight category when it's not good for you, for example. I'm sure that we can have another discussion about that in the future, because I think that's like one topic of discussion that like is probably like a full-on podcast.
Yeah. Well, like kind of optimum weight category and like determining that and how to stay in that.
Yeah, exactly. Like weight categories about like, not so much disordered eating, but about like, you know, if you have to stay within a weight class, but you're always, let's say your weight class is 96, but you're always hanging around 102, why are you competing in 96?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? And so there's a big, and I know that we're going a little bit off topic with like tracking calories, but I think it all feeds into itself, that like there has to come a point where you have to have some give and take. You can't just expect to, you know, after a competition go all the way up to like 105 kilos and then in 4 months come back down to 96 just because you have to, like, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't want to get too much on the detail because
but that's, I think that is something we should discuss, because I've had like loads of conversations, mostly with kind of like, honestly, it's surprising just how much beginners are thinking about it. Just like, oh, weight class. And it's like, no. You don't even need to think about that until you start getting kind of competitive or start bordering on national Precompetition. But I think it's like, yeah, it's an interesting kind of discussion, and you know, obviously nutrition feeds into talk about it at some point in some more depth.
Definitely.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. All right, should we go on to the next one?
Yeah, next one.
All right, here we go. The next one is, oh, this is from me.
Oh,
Even though
hello.
I'm not a vegetarian, how would you approach nutrition for a weightlifter who doesn't eat meat for their main source of protein?
Yep. Yeah, I would say a lot of people would question sort of the vegan diet and the vegetarian diet. I would say it's very, very doable. The only thing is, it is going to be tough to take in enough protein, but it's at the same time, you can do it if you're organized and if you go out and buy the good sources of vegetarian protein and vegan protein. You know, so in terms of protein, there's like beans, peas, lentils, there's tofu, there's like seitan, you know, avocado, spinach, whey protein, in terms of like vegan whey protein. There's I could name like endless amounts of different types of protein. But what I would say is, a lot of people get bogged down by it and they get sick of people asking, well, where do you get your protein from? It's very doable. You know, there's a lot of protein sources out there for vegans, for vegetarians. The only thing I'm going to say is, it's definitely easier for like a meat eater to get those protein sources in. And it's probably, well, I was going to say a little bit cheaper, but at the same time, you know, beans and peas and lentils, you know, they are cheap in itself, but there would be large amounts of protein in, say, for example, beef and chicken and ham and turkey, you know, and it would be quite easy to get them. Whereas you might have to just go that little bit further if you're a vegetarian or a vegan and source out, you know, them different types. But the lists are endless. You know, I've just named off a few there. You know, you have Greek yogurt, you have, you know, vegan whey protein, peas, beans, lentils, as I said, you know, different types of milk. You know, it's very, very easy. The only thing is, as well, you would potentially need to take in larger quantities, you know, in order to hit your recommended daily allowances. So say, for example, you know, people doing a high level of resistance training, you need to be taking in anywhere from between 1.2 to 2 grams per kg of body weight, potentially even a little bit more. But yeah, definitely very doable. Definitely very doable.
Sweet. I'm sure that will, because I think we've got a couple of vegetarians and vegans in our club as well. And I tried Veganuary a couple of years ago. And the main thing that I found really difficult was, it was easy to eat a lot of food, but
Yeah.
a lot of the food sources generally contain larger amounts of carbohydrates to protein ratios. But then as soon as I found stuff like tofu and lentils and things like that, like, it was so much easier to be able to get protein in larger amounts of quantities. Yeah.
And the thing about it is, as well, people think when you turn vegetarian or vegan, you're automatically healthy. You know, there's lots of bad, like, vegetarian foods as well. You know, you could sit and, you know, eat packets of Oreos all day, you know, but it's not going to be good for you in terms of getting in your right sort of specific needs. And there's endless amounts of, like, you could just sit there and drink, you know, different types of milk and, you know, different types of like sweets and stuff, but
Yeah.
you know, you need to have your proper sort of categories of macros getting in your body. And yeah, just to reiterate, it doesn't mean that you're healthy if you become a vegetarian as well. You could, if you become a vegetarian, you could just eat chocolate all day and you say you're a vegetarian. It doesn't mean that you're healthy, you know.
Wait, so you're saying that if I eat this vegan cake before training, I'm not going to snatch 120 kilos?
Yeah. Say that again.
It's all right. It was just a stupid joke. I was saying, so you're saying that if I don't eat this vegan cake, I'm not going to snatch 120 kilos?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So we got a couple of questions from Sprout herself.
Oh, hello.
Which I'll pull up. So the first one is nutrition advice leading up to competition. What should change and what should stay the same?
Yep. So what I will try and keep it simple. So the night before competition, you should be reducing your fats and your fiber content. Number one, because fats are hard to digest in the body, or they can be harder to digest. And fiber, you just don't want it flushing out of your system. You don't want all them nutrients flushing out of your system the night before and going to waste. I would keep protein around the same. Say, for example, competition -3 days. Try and keep protein around the same, like the whole 3 days. So again, around 1.2 to 2 grams, depending on obviously your weight and other factors. In terms of carb loading, especially as Olympic weightlifting is such an explosive sport, I would try and, there is different, research out there in terms of carb loading and when to carb. I would say just the night before, just go 8 to 10 grams per kg of body weight. Just carb load the night before, have a lot of glycogen in your system, and then you're ready to go the next day, depending on when obviously the competition is. A lot of people say, you need to carb load 3 days before, before competition or before anything. I would say, to be honest, that is only the case in a marathon. If you're running a marathon or if you're running a big endurance event, to really just top up your glycogen stores and have them really full. But for a short, sharp, competition, or even a 60, 90-minute match, for say, for example, footballers, you only need to carb the night before or carb load the night before. And then just obviously just keeping your hydration levels steady throughout. And yeah, that's sort of really, really simplified down. And then obviously, try and get as much carbohydrates in after the competition as well. So anywhere between 1.2 to 1.7 grams per kg per body weight, just refilling those glycogen stores, some protein in there as well. And yeah, I would just keep it very, very simple and just be thinking, less of the fats and the fiber the night before, number one, because fats is hard to digest, or it can be hard for the body to digest. And then, fiber, you just don't want it going out of your system and losing all those nutrients.
Just out of curiosity as well, because we're talking about pre-competition, do you think that would be similar to pre-training? So for example, you mentioned that fats and fiber are obviously slightly harder to absorb. Let's say, for example, I know that I've got a heavy session today, right? And what would be, I mean, obviously you could probably eat anything, but in terms of the macronutrients, what would be the most important fuel sources in terms of fats, carbohydrates? What sort of things should? Yeah,
I would say to be honest, carbohydrates, very, very simple. And there's a lot of research coming out there showing you that there's a lot of athletes under fueling for competitions and under fueling for matches, especially younger athletes, and they're under fueling in terms of carbohydrates hugely. So I would say potentially, get a low form of GI carbs. Say, for example, hypothetically, you had a lifting competition at say 4 o'clock. Say 8 or 9 o'clock, I would get a big bowl of porridge, some fruit in there as well, dash of honey, and then have some lower GI carbs as well. So maybe some in a couple of hours time from the breakfast, have some sweet potato or some brown pasta, and then coming up closer to the competition, have some high GI carbs. So say, for example, maybe some white pasta, white bread, white rice, to really get the glycogen stores firing and getting them ready. And yeah, I would just say carbohydrates are very, very, a lot of people, I think nowadays, a lot of people's getting more sort of understanding that, carbohydrates aren't evil, and they're actually hugely important for athletic performance. And you can't live without carbohydrates for energy production. It's actually near impossible. It is doable, but it's very, very tough on the body. But yeah, I would just say for any young athlete, especially, carbohydrates, just really look at that.
Then I guess this kind of lends me into the second question, is I know this is probably going to be quite difficult to answer because it will be based on case to case, but if, for example, you are 97 kilos the night before and you've got to weigh in at 8 a.m. the next day, which I have done before. I'm like, shit, do I cut out
Oh,
water?
this was Loughborough, wasn't it?
This is Loughborough, yeah.
You have to tell the story of Loughborough.
Okay, so basically, this was back when I was in 89, and was I in 89 or in 81?
I think you were 89.
Yeah, I think I was 89. It was 89 or 85 maybe. But basically, I'm quite obviously not an 85 kilo lifter because I'm 6 foot. And so trying to be an 85 kilo lifter is not going to work. Anyway, I woke up 4 days before the competition, and I think I was either about 89 to try and compete as an 85 or something like 92 or 93. And I just looked in the scales and I was like, but I was like, what am I going to do? My first thought was obviously, oh, it's fine. I could just water cut. And I'd never done it before to the extent that I've heard people cut like 4 or 5 kilos of body weight, 3 days out of competition, which is, I personally would never, ever suggest to a strength sport athlete, because it's just so dangerous, like for your body. And I'm sure that you can maybe weigh your opinion in that. But anyway, so I messaged Alex. I was like, Alex, I'm like 4 or 5 kilos over the weight class. Maybe I should just enter heavier. She was like, nah, you could probably lose that amount of weight. So basically, the only thing that I ate for like 4 days was, I started with 5 liters of water on day 1, and then 4 liters and 3 liters, and then blah, blah, blah. And all I was eating was just protein. That's all I ate. And before the competition, I was 87. I was either 90 or 86. I can't remember what exact weight I was. I got there on the day and I weighed, what was it, a kilo over?
Yeah, I think, it was a whole, because it was a round number.
Yeah, I was
So
like a kilo over.
Yeah.
And I ended up having to go for a walk and spitting outside to lose weight. And then I came back into the weigh-in room and I took all of my clothes off, even my socks, my watch, my glasses, and I was 85 on the dot. It was the worst competition I've ever done. I felt so unstable in everything. Like the lift, like the videos, which maybe I can put on the Instagram or something, but like I just felt so unstable in all of the lifts, and it was just, I felt lightheaded all day, and it was just ridiculous. So moral of the story is, don't be an idiot, eat properly, and, start getting your nutrition right at least 2 weeks before your freaking competition.
Yeah. And like, just to like kind of just add on, like we couldn't change the weight class. Like that was set. Like he couldn't enter as a higher one now. So it was like, well, either we compete or we don't. So, but yeah, I remember you kind of like coming out of the weigh-in room, because did you weigh in twice, or was it just the one?
No, I weighed in twice. Yeah.
Twice. And kind of like second time sort of out, and you were just kind of like giggling. Did you do it? It's like, yeah, I just weighed in.
On the dot.
That's absolutely crazy. But it just shows you how important carbohydrates are in terms of competition. Like your body just didn't want to be there, and you were just so unstable, and it just showed like you're probably going into ketosis or something at that point.
Mate, I was sapped. Like I was absolutely sapped. Like I had no energy whatsoever, and like I'm pretty sure that I had to have 2 energy drinks just to get me going. Like, and I'm because my body was just craving. And the thing is that as soon as I weighed in, I wasn't even hungry, because I was just so dehydrated that I was just like, no, I just want to have some energy and then lift. It was horrendous. I'm never doing that again. That's why I'm no longer an 89. I'm going up to 102. Let's go.
Oh, nice.
Big boy.
Wait,
anyway,
so what was the question again?
The question was, it's to do with like weight cutting. I don't know if you know loads about weight cutting, but like for strength sports, it's probably not as prominent as it might be in, say, contact sports, like combat sports, sorry. But like, what's your opinion on cutting weight for competitions?
To be honest, I wouldn't be too, but what I would say is, yeah, you just need to be organized going into whatever like weight class category you're going into, because the last thing you want is your performance to hamper. You need to be on the ball, and you need to be on the ball of your nutrition and your hydration. Yeah, I've heard, for example,
Sorry, Paddy, your mic's
We've lost
gone a little bit.
your audio.
sorry, let me just.
Oh, we got you. We got you. Yeah.
Is that all right now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yeah.
Cool.
Sorry, it just cut out.
But yeah, that's all right. No, cool. No, you hear stories about, like, say for example, jockeys, and they're obviously trying to be as light as possible, for the least amount of weight on the horse. And I've heard stories of they actually purge before they race. So like there's like a big bowl in the middle of the room, and they all just get like sick into the bowl before the race and stuff. Like that's going to an extreme. And then I've watched different documentaries. I've watched different documentaries of like boxers,
It's so grim.
It's so bad. Like, and I've watched different documentaries of like boxers going into like hot baths, and then they just basically wrap them in hot towels, and it's absolutely mad. And even to see the likes of the UFC, when Conor McGregor was fighting at such a lightweight, and you could just see the definition in his face. I don't agree with it, to be honest. I don't agree with all this like weight categories and people cutting weight, and it's very, very, it is controversial, because you even see like bodybuilders on stage as well, just like collapsing, trying to be as ripped as possible, and they want the sort of muscle bulging out of their skin. But yeah, going off on a little tangent anyway. But yeah, I wouldn't be that familiar with weight cutting, for specific sports. But all I would say is, don't try and just do it a couple of days before. You need to just consistently be in a calorie deficit, and potentially, very, very slowly, reduce your water, reduce your carbohydrates leading up to the competition. But like, it is an extreme way of like completely cutting out your carbohydrates. Like, it will work, and if you drink no water, like, but yeah, just be careful.
I wouldn't advise it for anyone though. No carbs and no water just makes you feel weak as hell.
Yeah,
really crazy. Anyway,
the good thing about weightlifting is, of course, the weigh-ins being 2 hours before the competition rather than like 24 or 48. Because that's horrible. But yeah, no, I have seen people, in a bit of trouble kind of ahead of things. I've seen, like, as a kind of like general rule of thumb, I think I've seen like 105% of your competition weight you should aim to be kind of hanging around. It's not, and we're talking like, competitive level here, you shouldn't be losing much, if anything. If anything, it should be a little bit of water weight, and that's it. Because it's just, it's one of those sports that there's so much emphasis on like explosive power, and not just strength. So that's why you see, like, powerlifters, for example, will cut a lot more harshly, than weightlifters, because that kind of like that speed and that explosive power is not like quite as important. Whereas we can't afford to, because you've made it to your weight class, you just bombed out on snatches.
Well, that's the other problem as well, is it's not just explosive and powerful. Like, you have to have so much focus and coordination to snatch.
Timing, coordination.
And this is not to take away this is not to take away from like powerlifting, because I've seen people who have cut like 5-6 kilos and pull 3-4 times body weight, which I still don't understand to this day how people do that. But like, there's a difference between pulling on a big weight in a deadlift and trying to snatch, where not only do you have to have so much coordination, like, you've got to have the energy enough to be able to be explosive to move that weight, because otherwise it's just going to fatigue the hell out of you.
Another thing as well, your brain feeds off carbohydrate. So the way you talked about, Connor, of you just felt your coordination was all off, like that was mainly down to you having no carbs, because your brain feeds off carbohydrate. If you're going into an exam even, or you're going into something that needs a bit of skill level, a bit of coordination, carbohydrates is hugely important as well. You often find that when people cut out carbohydrates, they often get headaches as well. And that's obviously going into ketosis as well. But yeah, the brain loves carbohydrate, feeds off
Yeah.
it.
Loves beer is what you're saying.
Let's go.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got another question from Alex.
Connor knows.
Connor knows. It's putting on weight whilst maximizing muscle development.
Very, very simple, to be honest with you. It's just about keeping your protein high, and being in a calorie surplus. Very, very simply. Yeah, that's pretty much it, if I'm honest with you. Just keeping your protein high. Some mistake that people make sometimes is just, well, I need to go in a bulk phase, or I need to put on weight, so I'm just going to eat everything. Well, you could be putting on weight, but you could be putting on a lot of fat as well. So you need to, number one, keep resistance training, and then number two is just keep your protein high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty simple, isn't it? Eat big, lift big, sleep big.
Exactly.
Eat big,
I
lift
think, like,
big,
just to
sleep
add on
big.
to, eat big, lift big, sleep big, leave a giant coffin.
Leave a big coffin.
Like, just kind of like to add on to sort of bulking as well. Because obviously people kind of distinguish between like clean bulks and dirty bulks, which, as you've said, like, just trying to eat everything and then ending up putting on a lot of fat in addition to weight.
Yeah.
And I'd say that, like, obviously, the clean bulk is going to be more ideal. But if it's the case that, like, you're really struggling to clean bulk because you're just not getting in enough calories, then yeah, fuck it, start eating some Mars bars as well. And you'd rather put on like some muscle and some fat than not on anything at all. So,
but you also have to put some fat on to get muscle.
Yes.
You can't. I personally, and bodybuilders say like we're the only people that can put on lean muscle without fat. That's an absolute lie. The only reason you can do that is because you're absolutely stacked on drugs. Like you're taking testosterone, HGH, IGF. Like, we're not doing that. So we have to eat and train and do it slowly. Like we have to put fat on before we can think about putting that fat into muscle, or not turning it into muscle, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, you often see like beginners, for example, might be able to do, we're talking people with like, basically no kind of training experience like whatsoever, and like, Paddy, feel free to like jump in if I'm getting this one wrong, but like, I remember kind of when I first started getting active, like I wasn't really putting on fat, but like I'd definitely get more definition. That was purely from like just swimming, just because it's something that I hadn't been kind of exposed to before. And but obviously it's like the years go on, you become intermediate, you edge into advanced, and it's just that you can't really put on muscle without putting on fat unless you're taking the spicy vitamins. And even then you'll probably have a bit of both. So
yeah.
And I think as well, a lot of people who are trying to put on weight as well, they don't take into account their daily energy expenditure as well. I remember somebody coming to me and they couldn't put on weight, and I worked out his energy expenditure, and it turns out he was walking 16,000 steps a day without even knowing it.
Right.
And I was like, he's like, oh, I don't do any cardio, but I was like, you're walking 16,000 steps a day.
Yeah.
So, and then he was like making jokes about, oh, he needed to get a car then because he didn't want to do enough. He didn't want to do too many steps. But like it just shows you, like, in terms of like energy expenditure. So for example, someone who says they can't put on weight, maybe they're like walking like 20,000 steps a day, then they're coming working out, they're doing like, they're just reps after reps after reps. Then they're probably potentially they could go and work as a waiter or a waitress. They're walking around all day, versus somebody who has a sedentary job, who's sitting in front of a desk all day. All they do is they go and they lift. The intensity is not too high. They go and eat, and they probably get a bus home and go to bed. It's completely different ends of the spectrum there. Like,
that sounds like Alex.
Living the life, my friend. No, I think like lockdown has been a blessing for that, because like, even though like I just bus it everywhere and can't be asked to walk, just being kind of stuck at home, you do realize just how much energy you do expend just like being out and about, just getting from A to B and B to A. So, you know, it's definitely made it a lot easier. And then also, you know, you're able to meal prep better, and you've always got leftovers in the fridge and easy access to those leftovers, which is pretty good. There was another point that I was going to make. I've forgotten. Hopefully it will come back to me.
Yeah, we might be able to come back to it. We've still got a couple more questions. All right. We've got a few off script, Paddy, but they're not like big ones. They're just right. So this one is, I'll give you a little bit of background. So one of our members has gone, I find it really important to have breakfast, but in order to get enough food over the course of the day and feel energized in the morning, but sometimes I wake up in the morning and I'm just not hungry. Are there any thoughts on getting yourself to be hungry enough to eat breakfast in the morning?
Yes and no. Sometimes just people aren't hungry in the morning, and that's completely okay. What I would say for that person who's trying to get the calories in, just have another snack or a meal there later on in the day. So where they previously wouldn't have had one, just put in like a meal replacement there, or, you know, have another snack ready. Another thing could be potentially going to bed a little bit earlier, and not having a meal late at night, because the body's probably just got used to that process of, well, say for example, they have a big bowl of pasta before they go to bed, or a big bowl of cereal. They've got glycogen in their stores, you know, they're full, and your body's sort of ticking away at that through the night. And by the time they wake up, you know, the body probably doesn't need any fuel, or it's gone on for that long that the body feels it doesn't need any fuel. So maybe changing up their nighttime habits in terms of their nutrition. And then they might feel that they're waking up earlier. They need food straight away. So different ways of doing it.
And on that subject, this is a question that's similar to that, but it's supplied by me. How important is having breakfast over other meals? Because I've heard different schools of thoughts where people are like, breakfast is the most important, breakfast isn't the most important. To be honest, I personally think it's down to the individual, but I want to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, I would say exactly the same, Connor. It's down to your specific goal and your objective. You know, if you need to put on weight, if you need to be in a calorie surplus, then breakfast is probably a good idea to get more calories in during the day. Say, for example, if you are just, you know, your regular Joe Soap, and you are looking to lose a bit of weight, taking out a meal at the start of the day can be beneficial, because you can get you back into a calorie deficit if you generally don't feel hungry in the morning.
Yeah.
You know, and you have it in your head that, well, breakfast is the most important meal of the day, I need to have it. You know, you don't really, you know, your body's probably going to survive for days without food, and I'm sure you're going to be fine by the time you get to the office. You know, you're not going to break down. You know, you're not going to break down completely. So I would say it's down to your goal, down to your objective. Some people like it and it's great and it gives them energy. Some people can run on till 2 or 3 o'clock with just a few coffees, and that's okay too, you know?
Yeah. Alex is similar to that. Whereas I'm like, I think it will also depend on like when training is, because I'm different in the respect to Alex, where I know that I have to have a full meal in to train well. And I don't know whether that's just because it's been ingrained to me, but I feel better lifting on a full stomach.
Yeah.
Whereas Alex can have 2 black coffees and she's fine. She can lift, you know, up to 90%, no problem, if she's had a good sleep. Like, it's crazy how,
I would be the same in terms of like from my training when I was training. You know, if I had like an early morning session on a Saturday, I could get up, say 8 o'clock, you know, have a coffee or two and go to training for 11 o'clock, train until 12, half 12, and then get back to the flat here and not have my first meal till like 2 or 3, and I was fine. And I had great energy levels, and it was probably due to eating a good bit the night before as well.
Yeah.
You know, and having that energy in the body. But
I found in my experience, it's like, even though my breakfast won't make a huge difference, but what I had the night before often will. So if I've had like a really solid meal, lots of protein, lots of carbs, then I'm good for training. Even like sleep is like, it helps because it helps me with my kind of mental state. But ultimately, it's like, I've hit the last PB I hit in the previous 95. 4 hours of sleep. but I just had like loads of carbs the night before. So
Yeah.
no worries there. But
I've
yeah, it's weird, but you know, it's the same for like, you know, for Connor. It all depends on breakfast rather than the day before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've heard that too, where some people in the, dare I say the C word, CrossFit Games. I've heard people
Get off this podcast.
Bad, it was bad.
No, I've heard it before where people are doing the CrossFit Games and they survive on like 3 hours sleep for like 2 or 3 days. And you know, they could just go on fuel, and yeah, there's so much adrenaline in them, but they're hitting like PBs and winning events, and they're doing brilliant. And I would find the same as well. Like, say for example, a couple of nights ago, I didn't have carbs in the evening, but the next morning I definitely found that my stomach was rumbling the next morning. Like, I definitely knew it was different and I needed something, you know?
Yeah.
I wonder if it also comes down to mindset, like telling yourself, I'm not hungry, I don't need to eat, or like, oh, I slept really well, even if you didn't. Because I know that the one thing that really annoys me is when, let's say, for example, I say, oh, I'm really tired. And you go, you're not tired. You just tell yourself you're tired, which is why you're tired. You're like, no, I'm fucking tired. But sometimes that does make a difference. Like the fact, you know, and I'm writing an article on it now about like approaching training with a positive mindset. Because when I train with Alex, this is outside of obviously COVID and stuff, I used to approach training where, and I know this is completely going off the topic of nutrition, but I used to come into training feeling like, oh, it's not going to be a good session. And Alex knows, like, I'm quite sort of like pessimistic when it comes to my performance, but every session that I've had for the last 3 weeks, even if I felt like crap, I've just gone, it's going to be a really good session today. And like, although it hasn't been an amazing session, it's been good, better than it might have been before. And I think to spin that on nutrition, like sometimes you think you need to eat when actually you might not need to, or like, you know, vice versa. You think that you need, I don't know, basically what I'm getting at is like, I think there's a difference between you telling yourself that you need to fuel yourself well and have breakfast compared to like just going with what your body is telling you it needs to do.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it comes back to the point I was saying on the last podcast as well, with people and lunch at 1 o'clock. You know, people might not feel that they're hungry, and you know they're doing work and they're chatting away to their friends, and all of a sudden they look up at the clock and it's 2 minutes to 1, and they start feeling hungry just because it's near 1 o'clock and it's near lunchtime. You know, and I would be exactly the same in terms of like in terms of my training as well. Like, you know, your mindset going into training, if you believe you're going to have a great training session, odds are you probably are. Whereas if you come in saying like, oh, this is a horrible day, so, you know, it's going to be a horrible session, like I hate this, odds are you're probably going to have a bad training session. It's pretty simple.
Like, because it's definitely, you know, there's definitely like, you know, what you're thinking about something will kind of influence how it goes. So I'd say like by and large, it's a pretty good rule of thumb. But I think like I've just had like so many where I felt like, yeah, it's going to go really well, and I've just gotten stapled. And you know, some of them where I've come in thinking like, oh god, like shit, and they're brilliant. So it's like the thing, because I'd say probably, I don't know, it's hard to put a number on it, but like because I've had that experience where I don't know, like even if I'm feeling good about it, I've no idea. Even if I'm feeling bad about it, I've no idea. So I just kind of like, it's good, it's bad, it's bad. Like that's it.
Yeah. But what you're doing there is setting the expectation that even if it's a shit session, it's okay. But if it's a good session, you've exceeded your expectations, which makes sense.
Yes.
It makes sense to do that. I used to do that as well.
Yeah.
And I think, you know,
yeah,
exactly. You know, if it's good, it's good. That's great. I've exceeded my expectation. Go on, Pads.
As Rue might say, sometimes it do be like that though.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I would say exactly the same thing. And you can learn from your bad sessions as well. So I would have had set like football sessions where they would come away from saying I performed really bad, but at the same time I've learned what I did wrong. And like in my preparation for the training session was bad. I know that's why I didn't do that, or I didn't pass the ball to this player, or in your case it would be, you know, I didn't, you know, make this lift because A, B, and C. You know, you can still learn out of the bad sessions as well.
Yeah,
But no, it's
absolutely.
definitely a good point.
Yeah.
All right, I think we've got one more.
Okay.
Okay, so this I'll give you a bit of background. So it says, I know you guys touched on this a little bit last time, and you touched on intuitive eating. So my question is, as an athlete, if you're following your intuitive eating cues but you feel underfueled, do you recommend pushing against your inbuilt cues and eating more, or whether you feel intuitive eating or tracking is better? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you're saying, is it better to just intuitively fuel up, or to calculate your your carbs and your stuff?
So I think that's kind of what the question is. But on my understanding is, let's say for example, you are intuitively eating, but you feel yourself that you aren't getting enough. Would you, as a nutritionist, suggest intuitively eating, continuing to intuitively, or forcibly trying to eat more against your inbuilt cues, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Again, I would just relate it back to my performance and how I'm feeling. I know it's a very simplified answer, but I would just relate it back to how I'm feeling. You know, if you feel that you're intuitively eating and you know you're trying to fuel yourself, but you feel that there's still something not there, then just eat more. You know, and if it comes to this age where you're still like eating more and trying to fuel yourself, and it's still feel that you're a little bit fatigued, then look at different factors outside that as well. So someone might feel that they're under fueled, but at the same time they're probably only might be getting 5 hours sleep per night. You know, that could be related to that too. It could be down to their hydration. It could be down to other factors, different relationships outside their sport, the different stresses, how they're getting on in their career. It could come down to that. But at the same time, if you feel that it's very simple. If you feel that the intuitive eating isn't sort of working for you, just go to a more calculated version and just sort of track your calories, track your macros, track your carbs, and go from there. I would just say keep it simple.
Keep it simple, yeah. It always reverts back to that, isn't it? It's just like it has to be simple. Like there's no need to overcomplicate things.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, change it up, and do like a little test with yourself. So say for example, somebody wants to eat, someone feels that their energy levels are down for like a competition, do like a testing day, or treat this day as the competition day, and then fuel the night before, carb load the night before, get up the exact time that you're going to get up on the competition day, drink exactly the same water, even like wear the same clothes going to the competition,
Yeah.
lift, make everything exactly the same. Exactly, yeah. and see how you perform.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. I think that draws most of the questions that we had submitted to us to a close. Alex, have you got any questions?
No, I think the only ones that I wanted to go over were the kind of competitive ones that just discussed really, really well. So I think kind of anything, I don't know, I can't think of anything beyond that.
I think it would be good to maybe discuss like weight cuts and weight classes in another podcast, because I think that's probably quite a big subject, because you can go into like water cutting, go into how to fuel properly, like disordered eating, stuff like that. I think that would be good. But I have one more question. I want to know, and I know exactly what you're going to say, but I want everyone else to understand this. What is your opinion on diets and the word diet?
Yeah, I don't like it straight out. Don't like the word diet, because there's a sort of, when people hear diet, I think people automatically think restriction, and restriction of different foods. And personally, when I hear diet, I keep thinking of really large people, you know, and restricting their diets really like loads.
Yeah.
And you know, instead of a diet, I think it should be more of I don't know if you could say the word, like a nutritional lifestyle change, or a nutritional change, or a different food intake to sort of better fuel your body. But the word diet, it's a very harsh diet, or very harsh word.
Yeah.
And it's it sounds very restrictive and very put offish. And you know, I get people asking me all the time, can you do me up a diet plan? You know, what, you know, I don't like that word at all. You know, it seems like it's very like prison like and restrictive, and it's like, you know, you should be enjoying your food, and you should be going and looking at different recipes, and the
Yeah.
way you can sort of blend foods together and enjoy the taste of food. You know, all I can think about is the biscuits in the cupboard. I need to stay away from them. It shouldn't be like that. You know what I mean? Even though sometimes it is. But yeah, going back to your question, don't like the word diet.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, there's an abundance of like diets now. Obviously the most common ones would be stuff like Atkins, paleo, ketosis. Even though I don't know much about ketosis, I have one of our athletes is currently following ketosis under. I told him that I don't think that you should do that, but obviously people will do that what they want to do.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to get your opinion on it as well, especially coming from when it's kind of like your mum and dad, you know, when they tell you to do something and then eventually you just stop listening until like your uncle comes and tells you, and you're like, oh shit, so he just told me, I've got to listen now. It's kind of like falling on deaf ears. So I just wanted you to.
But it's sort of, it comes back to the point as well, like say for example someone goes on the paleo diet, or you know, the Atkins diet or the keto diet. You know, I think with the general population, whenever they try these diets, they all amount to being in a calorie deficit no matter what it is, and they eventually lose weight, and they think it's down to the actual diet themselves, whenever it's actually down to them just cutting out processed foods and being in a deficit, and that's all it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on, Alex.
It's just like, you know, it's part of a much larger kind of problem that you see just in like fitness generally. And it's, you know, people kind of overcomplicating stuff that doesn't need to be overcomplicated, with the aim of just, you know, selling whatever diet plan it is, selling whatever, you know, new fitness equipment it is, selling, you know, whatever booty building program it is. It's just like,
You stay away from Brett
and it just
Contreras.
adds to that kind of like misinformation. Yes. Unless you have to be right, unless you want to be writing police reports. Yeah, stay away from Brett Contreras. No, but like, you know, and it kind of annoys me. And you know, you see it so many people, like, you know, you get, oh, you know, what do you do, like, in order to kind of look the way you do, you know, people outside of weightlifting, family and friends, that kind of thing, or, you know, what kind of things do you eat, and that kind of thing. And because they're just looking for like a quick fix to it. And then if you explain, well, it's not just about what you eat, it's about how much you eat, what your lifestyle is like, what you're doing, you know, your kind of like biology, and, you know, there's a lot more that goes into it. It's a little bit more nuanced than just like follow this diet and you'll lose weight.
Yeah.
And but I think it's like that. It's that people want shortcut solutions and they're willing to pay for that. But the thing is that like it's a little bit tougher than that, but people will sell you shortcut solutions if you're willing to pay for them.
I still see those. Or I laugh when I still see those things on the telly with the abs, you know, like the ab controller things. And I'm like, how is this even possible that people are still selling these and getting away with it?
Yeah.
It's just absolutely crazy.
Yeah. But it's the same in coaching as well. Like you mentioned, you know, food, and also with the six-pack stuff. Like you would think, when I was younger, I used to watch a guy called Mike Chang, who's Six-Pack Shortcuts.
Yeah.
And I used to think that everything that he said was literally like biblical. Like I thought he was God, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to do 100 sit-ups every day for 100 days and have a six-pack. Never worked. I did it for like 10 days, and yeah. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. I used to have a poster on my. I'm just joking. I didn't really, but basically, like you would think that the fitness industry would have progressed, and it has. Don't get me wrong. Like our understanding of physiology, nutrition, programming has all progressed, but it all comes back to like nothing changes apart from simple things. You have to eat well. If you want to lose weight, you have to be in a calorie deficit. If you want to get strong, you have to train for strength. Like nothing, it hasn't changed. And people invent all of these new and weird, wonderful ways to do it, but it doesn't need to be that complicated.
Like I remember we were having a little chat a while ago, Connor, and the All Blacks put up, you know, videos on the internet about how they train, and every time it's exactly the same. And they're the best rugby team in the world, and all they do is compound lifts, squatting, bench, pull-ups, some RDLs, some carrying, and that's it.
Yeah,
and sprints and plyometrics or something. That's it.
Yeah.
And that is literally it. There's no fancy machine.
And where's that come from? That's come from Russian scientific training principles. Guess what? That was 70, 80 years ago. And guess what? We're still going to be using that in another 70, 80 years because it fucking works. Like the body hasn't changed. It's changed somewhat, but come on, like it's not going to adapt that much to the point where we need to change this many principles. You know, every 4 weeks I need to do a Russian squat program, and then I've got to go on to this program and this program. It's like, no, you don't. No, you do not. I saw a funny post ages ago. I'm not sure if you follow James Smith PT.
Oh yeah, I do.
Yeah, so I saw a funny post which I wanted to send to you. I can't remember when it was, but it was like 5-2 diet, calorie fucking deficit, keto, calorie fucking deficit, intermittent fasting, calorie fucking deficit, shake replacement, calorie fucking deficit, paleo, calorie fucking deficit. And I was just like, yep, they're all the bloody same. Anyway, right, I reckon we'll cap it off there then.
Yeah, before we start getting a little bit too enraged.
Before we start talking about Mike Chang again.
Hey, Mike Chang is a saint. I don't even know where he disappeared to. He just disappeared.
It's too much competition for abs.
I miss him. There was another guy as well that I used to watch. I can't remember who it was, but he had like a really high-pitched voice, and he used to get like this massive neck vein whenever he used to talk, and it sounded like his fucking voice box was about to explode every time he spoke. But I don't know I can't remember what his name was. Do you guys know who I'm on about?
No idea.
I can't remember what his name was. I might have to find it, and then but anyway, I used to watch him all the time. It shows how much we've developed over the last 10 years, how my understanding of this has developed. But anyway, Paddy, once again, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate you giving up all your time and chatting to both of us. I'm sure that this definitely won't be the last nutrition podcast that we have you on. It would be really nice to get you back on soon to sort of discuss like weight cuts, weight classes, that sort of stuff as well.
Definitely, yeah.
And yeah.
No worries.
I also do you want to plug your Instagrams as well? Because I completely forgot to do that last time.
Yeah, no, that's gonna be all right. It's just McGuigan Fitness. So yeah, go look me up. I put up loads of nutrition and fitness related posts and stories as well. So yeah, go check me out.
And he also does nutrition coaching as well. So for those that are listening to this podcast, if you want some, then get in touch, or even just advice, like he said. Awesome.
No worries.
All right.
No worries.
Cheers, Paddy. Alex.
All right.
Cheers, Paddy.
See ya.
Thanks, guys.